Oh, the lighting in here is awful.
What is Lightning Scheduler first of all? And I am going to see here if I can share my screen. And like was asked, you can just watch the screen if you like, or you can also follow along as well. So today we'll do a hands-on example of kind of an internal Salesforce user use case, and then we'll kind of expose that use case on Salesforce Community Cloud. So, Kristen, can I share my screen? It says that you disabled it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did not mean to do that. Let's see. I think it's a new Zoom feature. So, all right, go ahead and try now.
Okay.
Or wait, maybe not.
I'm good. No,
It works?
yeah.
Okay, good.
All right. So hopefully everyone was able to get a fresh developer org. One thing I noticed with my older developer orgs is that didn't have this Lightning Scheduler Assistant app in that. So definitely go for a fresh org for today, possible. And yeah, like I said, we're going to talk about Lightning Scheduler. I want to just start off with what is it? You know, it's an appointment scheduling app. It's for more kind of complex scheduling use cases that involve skills and, you know, capacity, that sort of thing. And actually the objects that we'll be using today, a lot of them are used in field service Lightning, but Lightning Scheduler is not like the full-fledged field service Lightning. So I think of Lightning Scheduler a little bit like an older app that Click Software had back in the day called Shift Expert. So it's kind of I kind of think of it as a lightweight schedule, not lightweight, but kind of mid-complexity. You're not going to have all of your dispatcher screens that you have in field service Lightning, but you're going to be able to schedule and route appointments by skills and by, you know, the licensing and by availability and within different territories as well. I want to start off before we jump into the setup wizard here. I want to just start with a basic understanding of what the data model looks like. So let me. And the Salesforce data model is like a lot. I don't know about you all, but like sometimes it's just like a bit much for me. It's a little overwhelming. So I've gone ahead and just kind of captured some of the core objects that I think will be important for understanding how Lightning Scheduler works. So, you know, at its core, we have a service territory that can represent a branch. That could be a physical branch. That could be a county. That could be, if you're talking about a field service, that could be a certain geographic area. That could also be a branch, right? Like a branch of the bank, or it could be a hospital or a doctor's office, clinic, these types of things. So, like I said, this is very heavily used in wealth management as well as Health Cloud too. So we have our service territory object, again, that represents the location. We have our operating hours, which can be assigned to our branch or service territory. Again, you can use the same operating hours for multiple territories here. For operating hours, we have our time slots. The way they do it's by day. We'll see that in a minute. I think this is a master detail here. And then we have our service resource. So this is the person typically a internal Salesforce user who's going to be scheduled with a customer. And that service resource gets assigned to a particular territory. They can be assigned to multiple territories, but they can only have one primary territory, and you can set like secondary ones as well. Ultimately, this is just a lookup to the user as far as the service resource goes. And then another big part of this is skilling. So we can assign skills to service resources. There's a junction object in there to make that happen as well. So this is like the basic data model I want to focus on maybe for the first third of the meeting. There's kind of the flip side of this with the appointment and a lot of the kind of setting up the appointment side of things. But for now, let's kind of get in here and focus on kind of setting up the resource and the skills and the territories. So the first thing we need to do in our setup menu here, and I'll zoom in a little bit, is to set up a permission set. So any service resource that needs to be available to be scheduled needs to have a permission set and a permission set license as well. So if we come here, we will go ahead and click the Setup Permissions button. And we're going to create a new permission set. And I may need to switch my internet if it's lagging. Yeah, it's doing okay. So I'll create a new permission set. Now in this case, we're going to choose under license the Lightning Scheduler license. And we'll call this Lightning Scheduler. And in our search here, we just need to add a permission that's called let a user be included in appointments in Lightning Scheduler. So I'll just search for let a user and see what comes up here. All right, so I'll go ahead and click here. And I'll click Edit and go ahead and check the box. And I'll go ahead and save. All right, so let's go ahead and assign this permission to your system admin user. For the purposes of today, we will use your user as the person that's getting assigned, but also you'll be logged in and basically assigning the appointment to yourself. So I'll go ahead and click Manage Assignments here and Add Assignments. And you can go ahead and select your user. So your system will do the system administrator user. All right, so the Lightning permission set, the scheduler permission sets was assigned to one user. If we look at our user, we should see a few things. First of all, by virtue of selecting, and when we created the permission set, that Lightning scheduler license type at the bottom, we had this permission set license automatically assigned. If you had left that blank, that would be okay as well. But you would have to go in here and click Edit Assignments. And you'd want to make sure that we go all the way down here. You'd need to enable this permission set license manually before you actually assigned the permission set that has that system permission. Otherwise, you would receive an error. So just something to keep in mind. A little bit easier just to kind of do it as part of the permission set. Any questions on that? All right. So as far as this user happens to be a system administrator, there are certain objects in Lightning Scheduler that someone who is going to be scheduled for an appointment needs to have. Some of those core objects, the service resource, the work type group, the service territories. We'll get into those last two a little bit later. There's certain object permissions, and today we don't need to set them up. It's mentioned in the instructions though. All right, so that was our first step as part of our setup wizard here. The next item we're going to do is create operating hours and time slots. So let's go ahead and click this Setup Operating Hours button. And the time slots are down here. So this is actually two objects, like I mentioned in the data model. This is operating hours is the object, and then these are called time slots. Let's go ahead and set up some operating hours here. In this example, I'm going to call the operating hours Greater Twin Cities branch hours. And let's change our time zone to Greenwich time -5. All right, choose Chicago there. Let me know if I'm going too fast or if anyone has questions as well. So far so good, awesome. So we named the operating hours. We're going to create some time slots here. I'm going to do a Monday through Thursday 9 to 4. In our example today, it's going to kind of center around the theme of banking and setting appointments with a loan officer. And so we'll keep banking hours. In this case, we'll do 9 to 4 for Monday through Thursday. And we can scroll or just key it in correctly. I prefer to copy. And we'll do 4 for the end time. And when we think about, our use case, if we're talking about a bank, right? We may have loan officers in a bank. We may have account opening specialists in a bank, and different types of appointments that we may want to schedule. Today we'll focus on kind of loans in general, but these are kind of the overall. If it's a physical location, the physical location hours. Now, maybe the loan officers are only available from 9 to 11:30, and then in the afternoon from 2 to 3:30. So we can kind of clamp down those hours further. But right now we're setting up the overall operating hours for the service territory. So we'll go ahead and 9 to 4. Let's add Friday and Saturday. We'll do 9 to 3 on Friday. And for Saturday, we'll do 10 to 3. All right. So you'll notice here as well, you have the option for concurrent appointment windows. So we won't input those today, but those are more for a field service use case, or where, you schedule 5 appointments within the same window, and, you allow basically multiple appointments to be booked on top of each other, if you will. So you can set up kind of concurrent appointment windows. We're not going to do that today. We're going to try to keep it fairly simple, try to drive a good understanding in terms of some of the base functionalities of the tool. Go ahead and click Save. and we have created our operating hours and time slots. So if we want to look at that, let's go ahead and I want to show you like how it created the child objects. If we want to look at that, here's our operating hours. It really just has a name on it. But if we go into our related here, we see our time slots that we just created.
Well, quick question. You can set up like multiple operating hours, right? If you have like global operations in APAC, EMEA, so forth.
Absolutely. So operating hours ultimately will be assigned to a service territory. And the interesting thing with service territories is, like I said, it could be a physical location, it could be a geographic area. You can nest service territories, and so you could have the greater Twin Cities area, but then you could have that could be a service territory that's part of a bigger service territory, like the Midwest or some sort of district level. So if we look here in our next step, you'll be able to see that. Igor, did that answer your question? So yeah, you can have you would have a service territory for, maybe we're having the Main Street branch, maybe we're having the St. Louis Park branch, and maybe they have different hours. And so we would create different operating hours and assign the appropriate hours to each branch.
Yep, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So let's go ahead and create a few service territories here. Now, I think in our example today, I think we're just going to keep it simple and use the same operating hours, but yeah, you can certainly do different ones. So we'll create one here, and we're going to call this one the St. Paul downtown branch. And we're not going to do parent territories. Like I said, you could do it if you wanted to. And here's a required field for operating hours. So we have to choose that. In this case, the St. Paul downtown branch falls within these operating hours. So we're just going to select that. We'll hit active. So we have address fields here as well. And this becomes important in the scheduler. So one of the features, and we won't be able to actually show it today, but one of the features is it allows the user to put in their location, their address, and the scheduler will find the closest branch or service territory for the user. Or it could be someone, the internal person scheduling it or the customer themselves scheduling it. But it can pull in the address from the lead, pull in it from the contact, and find that closest branch for the person. And so that's where the address fields come in here. I'm not going to fill them out. Like I said, this requires a permission and an activation of a feature for maps and location services that you can only enable in a enterprise or unlimited edition of Salesforce. So not a developer edition, unfortunately. But we'll look at that a little bit more, and also kind of look at what it actually might look like in Enterprise Edition. I'll leave this address blank for here, or blank for now. And I'm going to go ahead and do a save and new, and going to do a second service territory or branch. Oh, you may not recognize that. Click it again. Make sure we have active. And we're going to call this one the St. Louis Park St. Louis Park branch. Again, going to use the same operating hours, and we'll leave the address blank and save. All right, so we set up our branches or service territories, and we've assigned the operating hours to them. And so now we're going to go ahead and create the people that work in these branches. Maybe they pop into multiple of the branches as well. I mentioned you can be a part of multiple branches. Sometimes we see this in wealth management. Maybe a client has an office in, let's call it Newport Beach, and maybe they have an office in Santa Monica. And the loan officer or the financial advisor will travel to whatever branch or office that the client is closest to. So we can certainly assign a resource to multiple service territories or branches as well. So I'm going to go ahead and create our resource here. And this is the person that we assigned the permission set to at the beginning here. So we're going to go ahead and take that same user and create a service resource. And for the name, just use your own name, your username. I'll use Paul Fischer. And for user, go ahead and select your user. So for the resource type, this is completely customizable. So if you wanted to add something in here like, instead of technician, financial advisor, loan officer, something of that nature, that would also be appropriate. I think we're okay to just leave it here as well. Make sure you have the active checkbox checked and go ahead and click save.
Paul, is this service resource the same one used with omnichannel when you are configuring like skills?
So the skills are the same. The service resource is not the same. The service resource is not the same. I believe omnichannel, I guess it has skills, also queue-based, which I'm more experienced with the agent being assigned to the queue or the skill. You can think of the service resource as kind of a junction in that way. They will have skills. They will have assigned skills. It does pull from that same skills object, to my knowledge. We'll see it in the setup menu in a few seconds. But the service resource is kind of it's a junction that's kind of representing the user in the front of the house Salesforce system. It's just, I think they made that design decision. It makes it a little bit easier to relate it to, service resource object as opposed to the user itself. You might have noted as well, assets can also be resources as well. So if you need to reserve an asset, such as, I don't know, if it's, certain meeting room, certain server, certain compressor, whatever the case is, you can also, let me see, actually, maybe we're not seeing it here, but there is a way to do the asset. Let me see. I do believe it is I believe it's a resource as well. I think we're not seeing it. And you may have to, there are a few fields that you have to drag on the page layout if you kind of want to, use it in a little bit more of an advanced way. I think asset may be one of those. But Igor, did that answer your question?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, sure. So we created our resource. We now need to assign the resource to a service territory. Just kind of switching back here before we do that, just want to keep things like in perspective as well, right? So we've created the service territory, we've created the operating hours and assigned them to the service territory. I think that's we went here and yep, we assign as part of the service territory setup. That's a direct link here. We got our time slots when we set up the operating hours as well. And now we have our service. We have our service resource, which is related to a user, which has a permission set and a permission set license. And we're going to go ahead and assign a service resource to a service territory. And that will be in the form of a junction object. So let's go here and going to click assign a location, which is here. So we can go ahead and hide this one. I'm not too sure why it doesn't say, you know, fully completed, or, you know, I don't really know. It looks like it's about 60% completed. I'm not really sure why the UI is like that. But we can go ahead and hide that step, and we've created our resource and we can assign it to a location now. So again, you can always, one thing that I'm not a huge fan of this setup wizard is it calls things different names than the actual like object name. Makes it a little confusing. It will get more confusing in this lower part as well. So I'm trying to also relate it back to kind of the core data model as well. But we have here we're going to relate the service resource to the territory. And in this case, our St. Louis Park branch is going to be primary. And it looks like that's all been, it kind of pre-did that for us. Let's go ahead and we're going to have to put in a duration here. And just the start date is required. So we can go ahead here and put, let's do yesterday. We can call it 9 a.m. Doesn't matter too much. This would probably be, you know, a loan officer start date, something like that, when you want them to first start receiving, to be available to start receiving appointments within this territory or branch. So sometimes we do things here. A loan officer may be moving to a new branch, and so we set up that new resource assignment to a new territory, but the start date may be in the future. So they're not accepting appointments at that branch until, you know, a future date, right? So we'll click save, and we've assigned the service resource to a location. I'm going to go ahead and create the skill now. And go ahead and scroll down here. Actually, let's go ahead and assign our service resource to a secondary service territory as well. So in the same step, let's go ahead and click the assign location button again. But in this case, I'm going to actually let me get rid of this. I want to show you some validation it has here. So I'll go for the St. Paul branch. I'm going to leave this as primary. It should yell at me when I click save. It really only allows one primary. So it'll yell at you and say, you know, this is already has a primary. You can only have one primary. So let's go ahead here and select secondary. And hopefully that will work. All right. So now we're going to create a skill that gets associated to a service resource. The skills plugin, kind of on the resource side. Also, you associate skills with appointments as well, and that's where that match happens, where you say, okay, you know, the customer wants this type of appointment, which requires this skill or skills, and, you know, it matches up based on the assigned skill of the resource. So we'll go ahead and create a skill. And we're going to click new. And Igor, to this point, you know, I believe these are the skills as well that are used for Service Cloud, that you can, when in your routing type and omnichannel, you can select that as a skill-based routing as opposed to a queue-based routing. So this skills is kind of used across the Salesforce platform, happens to be used in Lightning Scheduler as well. So you can see omnichannel, fields, FSO, and Lightning Scheduler.
Yeah, he came back to me, Paul. The service resource is the same used for omnichannel too, because you can determine
It
the
is?
skill
Okay.
level of the agent, and that what determines if they get or not the chat. It
Mm,
can be used for that as well.
okay.
As soon as I opened the service thing, the next step, I was like, oh, okay, I remember now.
Gotcha. I haven't used the service resource for Salesforce yet. I'm a little out of practice in my Salesforce skills, so that's interesting to know. I'll click new here. We're gonna keep our skills today super generic, really just for simplicity's and understanding's sake. You can of course make this, you know, as crazy as your creativity allows. So in our use case today, we're going to have like two main appointment types, personal loans and commercial loans, and we'll have subtypes within those. But we're just going to assume that this user can take either of those types. So in this case, we're just going to call our skill loans, right? And of course, if you're in a branch, you may have a account opening skill, different types of skills like that, a tax advisor skill, these types of things. But we're going to keep it nice and simple today, and we're going to say loans. And click save. So if we go back here, and I can X out of this, we are now going to assign that skill to a service resource. And from a data model perspective, it's going to create something called a service resource skill. So we'll click assign a skill. We're going to select under the skill lookup field here, we will select the loans skill that we just created. For skills, you can put start and end dates. This may align to certain licensing requirements that you don't want, say, a broker meeting with the client if their 529 or their series licensing expires, or some other licensing. If you want to kind of have a check on them accepting appointments with a certain license or skill expiry. So you can certainly put an end date here as well. Or if you have some sort of ongoing development that they need to do to ensure that they're up on that skill prior to being able to accept more appointments. That's really what the end date is about. In this case, let's go for 6/5. Let's call it 9 a.m. I think that aligns with the operating hours we ultimately selected. End date, I'll leave it blank for now. All right. So we assign the skill to the service resource. So we finished this section. This one seems to have liked us better and says we finished it. And looking at our data model, I think our basic data model for our first two steps, I think we hit all the points. And so hopefully everyone is having a good understanding at this point with the base data model of Lightning Scheduler. All right. I want to talk now, let's move a little bit to the flip side of the coin here. Appointment types, assigning skills to appointments, appointment subtypes, all that fun stuff. So, and this is, when I was first learning this, I found this pretty confusing. So I'll slow down on this section and go slow, and please feel free to interrupt me as well. And this is where I was saying as well, the vernacular and the words used here in the setup wizard didn't necessarily match the objects, and it was a little confusing. But let's see here. I'm going to switch here to our other portion of the data model. I really just want to look at this part of it for now to keep things simple. So we have something called a work type. And that is kind of the high level appointment type. So in this case, we're going to create a work type called loans. And you could have other work types, right? It could be account opening. It could be, different big categories or buckets of appointments. Then within that, we have something called a work type group. And in our use case, we're going to create 2 work type groups. We're going to have one that's called personal loans, and we'll have subtypes within that. We'll have our auto loan, we'll have our mortgage, we'll have our home equity loan. On the commercial side, we'll have the subtype here will be our small business administration loans, our business line of credit, these sorts of things. You also can set up a little bit kind of the appointment settings here for this certain type of appointment. If it's a personal type of personal loans type of appointment, I want to block 30 minutes before maybe so I can prepare for that appointment, or 30 minutes after as well maybe so I don't get booked on back-to-back appointments. So we have the work type. Again, it's the high level. We're going to call it loans today. And we have our work type group that is kind of our category of appointment. There's a pick list when I talked about, our auto loans are these sorts of loans. There's actually a pick list on this record that we will configure with all of those very specific types of loans. And then as far as skills go as well, so a work type such as a loan, we'll have for this type, being able to schedule a loan appointment, it requires a skill. What skill does it require? Happens to require the same skill of loan that we assign to our service resource as well. Those two need to match up in order for an appointment to happen, right? So that's the kind of the first part of the data model. Ultimately, everything we're trending toward here is the generation of a service appointment record. And there is a junction here, kind of the service resource gets assigned to an appointment. That's how that happens. The work type also gets assigned to ultimately to a service territory. And so maybe in certain service territories, we're licensed to offer loans. Maybe in other service territories, maybe that's one of the parent territories. Maybe in Minnesota we can, but maybe in call it Illinois, maybe we don't do loans, but we do other types of appointment, right? So that's how kind of you can select based on where this customer is and where they're located, what types of appointments they would be eligible for. And that's how that happens. You assign the work type to the service territory. All right. So I hope it's all making sense. I wanted to kind of give you the background here before we get into the setup of all of this. So let's see here. We're going to go ahead and create what they call a topic here. This is, I don't know why they say that. This is, they call it the work type group. So going back here, that's this one. So we're going to do, like I said, we're going to do two of these, personal and commercial loans. So let's go ahead and click create a topic. Actually, before we do that, I want to set up the pick list values here, so that when we create these, we can select them. So let me cancel out of that. Let's go to Setup menu. Let's go to our Object Manager. Again, this object is called the Work Type Group. So in our quick find, let me move this in. hide. Okay. And our quick find here, we're going to go for work type group. That's the one. And our field, it's called the additional information field. So let's click into that field, and we're going to add some pick list values for it. So the additional information pick list values, let's do a new. If you have the document open that I put in the chat, feel free to copy all of these. Otherwise, I'll leave the screen up for a bit so that you can type those in. But so ultimately, like I said, we're going to create two work type groups here, one for personal, one for commercial. Our home loan, our vehicle loan, our home equity loan, those are going to be selected as part of that multi-select pick list for that personal work type group. And then we'll create a second work type group for our commercial. And we're going to, for the additional, for on that record in the multi-select, we're going to select those bottom four. So hopefully everyone here can go ahead and type these in. It's going to just be the full list across all of our work type groups. Okay. Go ahead and click Save here. And then we can get out of here. All right. So we'll again go ahead and click Create a Topic. And we'll start with our personal loans. So let's put the name here as personal loan. Default is fine here, active. And actually, I think it didn't quite pull these in yet. Let me do a cancel. Let me do a refresh. Create a topic again. There we go. All right, this is what we want. Try that again. Active. And for personal loans, home loan, vehicle loan, and home equity loan. The others will leave for commercial. Go ahead and click Save. I don't think the Save and New works. And we'll do this again. Create a topic. This time for commercial loans. Default again is fine, and we'll pull over these bottom additional information items pertaining to commercial loans. All right. So now the next step here we have is to create it's sometimes referred to as the appointment template. You can see here, and actually we have a step here in the setup wizard. I don't think we really need to do this step. I'm a little confused about it, frankly, because when you click this button, you really just get your operating hours object again. So I think, yeah, it's the same set of service appointment windows. So it's creating the time slots. So I think we're okay here. I don't think we need to do our operating hours again. I guess it's an additional reminder. But we're going to move on here to creating a template. And that is, they call it template. It's the work type, right? It's the work type. It's the big category, AKA the template, the work type. And so we're going to call this loans. And ultimately, what we're going to do is associate our personal and commercial loans work type groups with the parent, the work type. So here we will go to create a template, and we're going to call this loan appointments. You can see that operating hours here are, it's optional. So here, I think I mentioned this earlier, we set our operating hours for a service territory or branch. But for a work type, we can also set our operating hours. So maybe the general branch hours across the board, account openings, for instance, maybe they have, you know, longer operating hours or these types of, and maybe we would assign the default operating hours in that case. You know, anytime we're open, you can come in and open an account. But maybe for our loan process, it may be we have more limited hours that are available to be scheduled. So you certainly could come in here and create new operating hours specific to the work type, right? Specific to the work type. So you can kind of play with your hours depending on the types of appointments. This case, I'll go ahead and leave this blank. I'm going to go ahead and put 1 for the duration. It's going to be in hours. Let me see here. Yeah, and like I said, this is also where you can choose if you want to kind of block time before or after. You can do that as well. Maybe we'll do 30 minutes before and subsequently, maybe it's 30 minutes after as well. So really the main required thing here is the duration of this type of appointment. In this case, it's a loan type of appointment. Now, if for some reason the personal versus the commercial side, you know, one took way longer than another, you know, maybe we decide that instead of having personal and commercial at the work type group level, maybe we promote it and say, you know what, this is actually truly a, we're going to promote that to be a work type. And within that, we can set our different durations as well. So a little bit, you really have to think about what's our use case here? What's our business practice? How does that fit into our Salesforce objects? There's not necessarily a right or wrong way to do things here. Again, I happen to have selected kind of all loan types are going to be 1 hour. May or may not be true, depending on your business process. Let's go ahead and click save.
What's the time frame at the bottom of that?
Oh, let me go back here. Here we go. Oh, here, the time frame. So I believe, I'm not entirely sure. I think this, if it's like a multi-day, or I don't know if this is scheduling in advance. I really don't know. Or if this is, if it's a multi-day type of kind of start time. I'm not sure. Sometimes, right, sometimes there's service windows as well. So whether that's hours or even days, maybe it's something along those lines where the customer would be willing to accept an appointment within kind of the plus or minus 2 days type of thing. I'm not entirely sure though. I couldn't tell you. I actually haven't used that in any of the Lightning Scheduler implementations I've done.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. All right. So as far as we have our template or our work type, and we're now going to set up what I personally call meeting channel, and which is very important these days. in the age of coronavirus, because you can, the meeting channels where you say, is this going to be an in-person appointment? Is this going to be a video appointment? Is this going to be a phone appointment? What type of appointment is this? And so there are some pick list values here that we will add to our appointment types. And it's actually really important here to like really get the pick list values correct. It's going to pull in some icons from the Lightning design system. And you can have your field labels different, just that the API names need to be correct here. So let me go ahead and click this. So that took us to a pick list field on the service appointment object itself. So that's kind of the ultimate end object that we're trying to get to. And here we'll go ahead and create a few new fields. And in this case, it needs to be phone at a branch and video. And you can go ahead and click save. Now, if you wanted to change the field labels on these, that's fine. Leave the API name. So if you didn't use the term branch, for example, you may want to change that. There is some sort of mapping, it seems, between the API name and the Lightning component that is embedded in the flow for the scheduling action that displays some sort of icons that, that shows a video camera, if it's, for the video option, that sort of thing. So recommend to kind of keep these pretty standard. And then, so we got our pick list values there. And now what we're going to do is go ahead and assign our topic to the template. So we created these, and we're going to add a skill to a template. So let's put that back in frame. So here's our work type, aka the template. Here's our skills, which are relating to here as well via skill assignment. But here we need to relate our skill to our appointment type via this junction object skill requirement. So it's just going to be a junction between the loan skill and the loan work type. Click add a skill. It's going to pull in loan appointments there. Just going to select loan here. To Igor's point, this would be the requirement of the skill level, which could be mapped against the skill level of the skill level of that service resource. But in this case, we're not going to get too crazy, so let's not do that. All right. So we did that. We're going to go ahead and, what is this? Assign. So we need to assign the groups to the overall work type, make that relationship. It's going to be a junction object to that work type group member. So it's from the diagram on the left, the work type group to the overall work type via this junction. We're going to have to do two of these. Since we have two work type groups, one for commercial, one for personal loans, the work type will be the same, loan appointments. And we'll click assign topic again. And I think, did we already do? Let's see. Do personal here and save. All right. So that was the step here, assigning a topic to a template, which I'm not a big fan of the work, assigning the work type group to a work type ultimately. Finally, we need to make this relationship, assigning the work type itself to a service territory. So that's up here. Here's our work type. Here's our service territory. We're gonna assign them together. We'll click assign template. We have our loan appointments. Yep. And so we can do that for our St. Louis Park branch. That's fine. If we wanted to as well, let's say our St. Paul branch is also accepting, offers loan appointments. We can come in here as well and do the same thing. Let's go here and here's our St. Paul branch, and we'll create that relationship as well. All right, we're through it. As far as the big setup pieces are concerned, these small things, but this third step is the most complicated. The data model takes a little bit of time to wrap your head around. Any questions? Great. So we'll keep on going then here. A few very basic Salesforce administration tasks to complete now. We're going to add a lightning action to a page layout. It's called schedule appointment, and we can go ahead and test it out as well. So this action is available for leads. It's available for contacts. It's also available financial services cloud. We use accounts a lot, household accounts, individuals, which are person accounts. Let's start with leads here. Go to our page layout section here for lead. I think this is the default assigned layout, this bottom fourth one, lead layout. And we'll go to our mobile and lightning actions here at the top of the page. And let's find the schedule appointment action here. Let's go ahead and drag that in. I'm going to do it as the very first thing. So it's, I have to click the caret. And let's go ahead and hit save. Now, like I was saying, we could do the same thing for other types of objects that represent people inside of Salesforce. Maybe we'll do it for the contact as well. So we'll edit that contact page layout. Again, I think it's the bottom one. And we'll go to the mobile and lightning section here. Let me see. Actually might not be available for contacts. I'll show you how to, in a minute, create a custom action here that invokes these schedule flows, and also how to edit some of those flows as well. What this action is, if we go back to lead here, and we take a look at it. When you create an action, one of the things you can do is you can choose to have it launched from a flow. So if we go here to new action, and instead of in the action type, this is informational. I'm not creating anything here. But one of the action types is flow, right? So, Lightning Scheduler comes with a handful of flows, so you can see here the outbound flow. What that means, that is an internal Salesforce user scheduling an appointment on behalf of someone else. So there's one for the outbound flow is like the new initially creating the appointment. You also have the ability to modify an existing appointment as well that has its own flow with it as well. So if we wanted to, we could say, instead of schedule the new, we can say modify existing appointment and save. And let's go ahead and add that just for fun to our page layout. Go back to lead here. Mobile lightning actions. And I'll go ahead and put that one on the page as well. And save. All right, so few ways we can test this out. Again, we're not going to be able to test the full breadth of it, unfortunately, but you can see here, there is a button where you can go ahead and basically launch the action in the flow. A few things to note here. So you can choose to, you can go, if you know exactly who the appointment needs to be with, a lot of times in financial services, a client will have a dedicated financial advisor or wealth manager. Then you can go here and search the service resources by name. And that may make sense to do. And you can also, you can select here. See if we, not sure who we have as a lead. I'll go with an account here.
A quick question here. So can we do modify the flow in which way that we want to pre-populate the agent and maybe the account?
Yes, yes. The flows are modifiable. We'll get to that shortly here, actually. And so they are modifiable. You can create your own custom actions as well, and have it be a little bit different than kind of the standard appointment flow. I think one of the big hurdles we have in developer edition orgs is the enabling of the location services. And so we can modify our flow, and I'll show you where we'd want to modify that. We'd want to use a screen with a lookup element and then a get records element. But yeah, you can't modify like the existing one, but you can do a save as, certainly, and create your own and create your own custom action.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. We'll definitely dig into it more. Okay, so yeah, I think I cleared my service resource out there when you select this parent record ID. But if I go here and click next, all right, so here are our, overall, this is showing a work type group of our loan appointment, right? So this, and that just happens to be the only one that this Paul's assigned to. It keeps doing that. All right. You can see here, I can select commercial. We're going to see those pick list values here that we created on, that was the multi-select pick list in the work type group, right? And it was the additional information pick list. That's where these are. Select one or multiple as well. So let's say maybe it's a small business administration loan. Alternatively, we can come here. We have our personal loans. Again, this is pulling from the additional information pick list on the work type group. So maybe we're going to do maybe we do a home equity loan. Now, this is the part I think we set up those kind of, I call them like appointment channels. It's just a pick list field on the, I think the service appointment type. It looks like it pulled in the icon for video successfully. Maybe I mistook the API name for the branch or the phone. Not sure why the icons aren't pulling in here, You can specify here what type of appointment do you want it to be. Phone is, like I said, more common given the global pandemic. And here's where we hit a little bit of a roadblock as far as how the default flow is set up. It just doesn't quite work too nicely with Developer Edition. I'll show you where we can modify this. But there is a permission out there called the Maps and Locations permission. And again, only able to be activated in Enterprise or Unlimited, not Developer, unfortunately. So this is where we hit a bit of a roadblock, and we can't really go on to the next step in the flow. Again, we can replace this with a different screen with a lookup and maybe a get records, and kind of so, you know, allow the user to search maybe by state, by city, as opposed to kind of the Google. This is powered by Google. Let me show you what that looks like. So there's a view sample service appointment button up here, right? In this case, it also happens to be by name in their screenshot. They happen to use, instead of personal and commercial, they have investment as the work type group. We can see here the call looks like it's successfully pulled in. And so here's where we are not able to enable, we're not able to enable the locations permission. But what you can do is, you know, enter the address. You can set your radius, and then return back the branches. And this is a bit intelligent, right? So this is going to return back the branches, but not just the branches in this area. It's going to be filtered by your work type group, and potentially as well the sub appointment type, or the additional information. So it's not necessarily going to show all the branches, depends how you have it set up. So it's very flexible. From here, your dispatcher or outbound appointment scheduler can select the time, and they can basically click next, and there's a confirm appointment screen. If you're on the phone with the customer, you can write any notes here that you would want to give to the service resource that is receiving that appointment. So that way, the financial advisor or the loan officer or whoever knows about it. You can also put notes in here as well for the customer, so that they know to bring which documents that they need to bring to the appointment. Maybe it's the last 12 months of payroll. Maybe it's, you know, proof of income for a home loan, right? So we have the contact information here. Now these are for the on the customer side of things. It's very interesting. I believe the service appointment does look up to, it looks up to lead, it looks up to these standard things. But really it's actually, these are plain text fields here. It's not like a formula field pulling in from the related lead. Not too sure about the design behind that. But these are just text fields. We can pull up a service appointment record in a minute. But then you get a confirmation screen here. You're good to go, and you've created the service appointment. When we look at a service appointment, we can create a new dummy one just manually here, since we can't do it in the flow. Relate it to the contact. We have the parent record. You saw that in the flow. That's kind of the main, that's the main person who, like, it's the main customer, basically, who the appointment's with. And then as far as the service resource, that is not a lookup. It's a related list, because there could potentially be multiple service resources assigned to this appointment. So maybe we'll say scheduled, do the basics. All right. Well, I think when they mean due date, I think it's the end date, end time. So let's do that. I just want to show you the related list here. Oh, messed that up. So here's where we will have our assigned resources. Could be an asset, could be in any type of service resource, could be an asset, could be the service resource that looks up to the user, required or not. Flow does all of this automatically for you. It does all like the intelligent stuff with it in terms of the routing and all that. Let's go to a lead. I just want to show the actions there. Here's our actions. Schedule appointment. We're gonna get stuck at the same step. We don't have to put it, it'll feed in the parent record ID automatically when you launch it from the lead. And as I mentioned, if there's not a specific named, maybe this is new business coming in the door, as opposed to an existing relationship, may not be by name. In that case, we can choose our items. Again, we'll get stuck here. But that's the idea. If there was an existing appointment, it may yell at us. There's not really.
So Paul, another quick question here. So are we able to send invite to our lead or account record? Let's say
Yeah.
all right. So how it will be usable, like the basic scheduler, so customer will get just the confirmation, or maybe he will get the available slots there. He can choose which one he's available for.
It's not going to be that unless they're scheduling it themselves. We'll look at Community Cloud and a little bit later. But Lightning Scheduler works in tandem with what was formerly Lightning Sync, which is the event sync out to both the service resource as well as the client. And that event sync functionality is being moved into Einstein Activity Capture. But these service appointments, which are really the appointment records, they map to events, standard Salesforce events object, and it will pull in the attendees, it pulls in all of that, and that's how the event invite can be sent out. There's also like certain configurations you can do for a certain service resource. If it's a video type, we include their Zoom link, or we include their GoToMeeting link, or whatever, right? We typically do like the personal meeting rooms as opposed to like a dynamically generated one. But yeah, that's typically handled from kind of that where Lightning Sync or the event sync with Einstein Activity Capture plugs in to the service appointments. So that's really the beauty of, it's a Salesforce product. It works very well with other, of course, there's other appointment scheduling apps out there. I have clients who use third-party app called Schedule One. It has a Salesforce integration, but it doesn't work as flawlessly as Lightning Scheduler because it plugs in so nicely with the standard events in Salesforce.
Oh, thanks for that. And also, as you said about the Hangout Meet or maybe the Zoom info, so it's just simple that we need to just update the event on a Google Calendar, and the applicant will get the details according to the event, similar to Google Calendar.
Yeah, you could add the meeting details after the event invite gets sent out, but you can merge it into the event, not necessarily the service appointment, but you can grab kind of with standard Salesforce configuration, you can store the advisors or the service resources, what their meeting ID is, their go-to meeting link, and basically merge that into it's ultimately to the event, which is what kicks out the location in the event, which is what the event invite to the client and the service resource is based upon.
All right.
Great. All right, so I want to shift gears here. I think we have about 30 minutes left. I want to shift gears to our, let's take a quick look at flow, the underlying flow powering these actions. Show you a little bit where you may want to modify this afterwards, a little extra credit if you want. So let's go ahead and go in our setup menu and navigate to, let's type in flow in our quick find. All right, so you can see as far as the process type goes, we have a bunch here called Lightning Scheduler Flow. So, and Salesforce differentiates them between inbound versus outbound. Now, outbound is a dispatcher scheduling the appointment on behalf of a service resource and a client. Inbound is typically the client scheduling, it's a self-service model, the client scheduling the appointment for themselves based on a convenient appointment time for them. We're going to use, in our community cloud example, we're going to use this one. Our use case will be scheduling on a unauthenticated or public community. And so we'll use this inbound new guest appointment. Guest is referring to the guest profile, which is for the community cloud. That's kind of the unauthenticated public profile here. The one we're using right now, the standard one that we added, it leverages the outbound flow and also the outbound modify appointment. These inbound cancel, inbound modified, these are for authenticated community users. So someone who has a customer community plus, these sorts of things, we know who they are. And so their contact and, quasi their user as well for the community user gets associated with the appointment here. I do want to, let's drill into one of these since we had such a great question regarding the flows. I would like to show this one. All right, so you can see it has, and you can kind of like, when you look through the example, you can kind of like reverse engineer it. It's setting different stages so the flow knows where it's at in each stage. Our location screen here is probably one that we would remove if we wanted to get this going, like the ability to select the service territory. You can see here there are certain components that the standard components that Lightning Scheduler includes. All of these select items here, select resources, all these items. But we may consider maybe using a lookup, using a get records, manually searching instead of using this component, maybe using a few of our other tools in our flow tool belt here. And ultimately, but you can see it's, it's this standard one is taking a lot of, based on the address and what the user inputs, it takes the latitude, it takes the longitude, a lot of these things that Google provides. And then it stores them as outputs so that they can be filtered down. We can take the location data and filter down our service to our applicable service territories. So it's extra credit for anyone who wants to do that and get this a full flow going in their developer org. All right, so let's now shift gears to Community Cloud. We want to just create a simple example here. We have a few use cases. Let me pull this over. I'll talk about the one we want to key on here. A few use cases though, right? So a customer's scheduling an appointment themselves, maybe authenticated or unauthenticated. That may affect which flow we want to use. Today we're going to look at unauthenticated. The other thing is maybe you have a third-party dispatching company that you've hired to do your dispatching for whatever, for whatever your field service or your taxi company, whatever, right? In that case, maybe you don't want them to have full access to as an internal user to your Salesforce org, but they have access to your portal so that they can schedule. This is still considered, quote unquote outbound, where it's a kind of a third party scheduling the appointment for a service resource and for a customer. We'll key in on this one though. So let's go ahead here and enable communities in our developer org. I'm going to type in, I think it's community settings. And we'll go to community settings here. Let's go ahead and click the enable communities checkbox. And I am just going to call this our test bank Saturday. And let's go ahead and get a domain here and click save. All right, so we've enabled Community Cloud here. Let's go ahead and click New Community. Uh-oh, might have to wait a minute. All right, as far as templates go, what template you choose dictates what standard components are going to be available in your experience builder. Now it just so happens that we're going to be using the flow component, and every template supports that flow component. So it really doesn't matter which template you choose here, but it is important to know like certain components are only available in certain templates in Community Cloud. So here's the list here. I put in our guide for today. If we search for flow, we can see we're pretty well covered across the board for all of our templates. So should be all right. I'm going to go ahead and choose customer service, and I'll click get started. Just going to, just put a shell here of a community. This is, we can always go back and edit these later. All right. So we've created our community. Let's go ahead and add our flow component to the community. So once your community loads, you're going to see under My Workspaces, you're going to see the builder. That's where we want to go. So click Builder. Just like a sidebar, right? So community, I mentioned you can embed a lot of things in community. Appointment scheduling is probably going to be one of many things that you implement inside of a community. You know, I've implemented a few communities where, you know, it's a knowledge, you can have not your knowledge base. Here's an example of a community that is built in Salesforce Community Cloud. It's a, you know, typically a support use case, but you can see here, you know, you can have all your knowledge articles. You can set up your knowledge with your knowledge articles. You can have a log a case here. And, you know, sometimes if logging a case is not, you know, maybe you want more of a you know, instead of a back and forth, a scheduled appointment time. So you can certainly enable this in a community. So you can, it's really drag and drop in the builder, right? So there are some certain pages that, for example, the Service Cloud customer service template comes with. We're going to go ahead here in our builder and hover over components, and we're going to search for flow. And drag that really anywhere we want on the page. Maybe I'll do it above the featured topics and feeds component. And to the right here in this flow pop-up, that is where we will select the one I mentioned. It's going to be an inbound new guest appointment. It's important you choose the one here that says guest on it. All right. One other thing we need to do here, just a few administrative items. We need to make this community so that the public can access it. And you know, you can set up different pages in your community where some are publicly accessible, some are not. Maybe some knowledge articles are publicly accessible, some require a login to the community. So, you know, you can certainly have kind of a hybrid of authenticated and unauthenticated. But to really just kind of even make any of this available to have public pages, we're going to go ahead and check this public access box here. Okay. Going to go ahead and click publish here. Which is in the upper right-hand corner. When you check that box, there's not really a save at all. It's pretty much remembers it, so don't worry about that. And go ahead and publish. Let's click in the upper left here. Let's go to our administration. And let's go ahead and activate this community under the settings here. Now, one item under this administrations are members of who do you want to be able to be a member of your community. The guest profile is not one that you need to add here at all. You don't need to add that in. If you had other like customer community profiles that you wanted to add to be, you know, those users to be able to access the community, you could add for authenticated, you could add them here. I'm not going to add anything. All right. The other thing we need to do here is really configure this guest profile. And in order to do that, you have to launch it from our builder. You cannot. Last time I checked, you can't access the guest profile from the setup menu under profiles. It won't show up. So what we'll do here is we will click the gear icon in the builder under settings, and we have a section here called guest user profile. Go ahead and click where it says, it'll probably say the name of your community and then profile. Go ahead and click that. All right, so what we need to do here is grant some object settings, grant some some cred for objects, also a system permission, the run flow permission for this guest profile, and some field level security as well for this guest user. So I'm going to click edit here. And it looks like this is not the enhanced profile editor. And so I'll scroll down to our standard object permissions area. And so what we're going to want to do here, again, it's going to help if you have the instruction guide open. We're going to want to grant read permission on a handful of these objects. So operating hours is one of them. Service territories is another. Work types, a third, and work type groups as well. Needs access to it because they're going to see that flow that is displaying data, such as the work type groups. We also need read and create object access for leads and service appointments. Leads and our service appointments. And I missed one, we also need to read for service resources. The other item what we will do while we're in the edit profile mode here is grant the run flow system permission. So we scroll just up right above here. Run flows is right here. Let's go ahead and check that. And let's go ahead and save. All right, now we need to do a little bit of field level security on the time slots object. So what we'll do here is we'll scroll down and we'll find that object. It's right here. Go ahead and click view and click edit to edit the field level security. And we're going to give just read access. And save. Let's go back to our profile. Let's click view users. We're going to set the default time zone on the guest user. So we were on the profile before. When you're on the profile, there's a button, view users here. For our guest user, it's going to be 1. It applies to everyone. We're going to click edit to edit this user. And we're going to click the time zone. And because we are based in Central Time here, we'll choose -5. We'll assume that our visitors are also. We can display that as well if needed. For guest users, it's a little bit more difficult from a scheduling perspective with the time zones because for authenticated like customer community users, they can set their time zones. You can set that on their specific user. For a guest user, it's one guest user and the time zone applies to everyone. And so it's not really specific it may not be specific for the person. So it's good maybe in a notes part in your UI and your flow to at least for our our inbound guest flow to really call out what our time zone, our assumed time zone is. So we can go ahead and click save here. And we set our default time zone. Now our last step here is giving the guest user organizational-wide default access to these records. So they have the profile access. They may or may not, they probably don't have access to actually view those records based on the external default settings. So we can do one of two things here. And in Salesforce's workbook, they recommend creating sharing rules on each of these objects. So it's the service resource object, the service territory object, work type, and work type group. You know, I think alternatively, just as fine could be giving a public read-only in the external wide default sharing settings to these objects as well. It would in essence do the same thing. So you can look at both here. Let's go to sharing settings in our quick find. It looks like I'm in the when you go to the guest profile, it seems to put you in the classic setup menu. If we scroll down here and let's go to our first object, which is service resource. I'll just do a search, service resource. Looks like the default external sharing setting here is private. Let's go here, let's create a sharing rule. Let's call it guest user service resource access. And you'll notice there's the third radio button here is for guest user access based on criteria. Now in our case, maybe our criteria is that this person is active because they probably would only need, they're only going to be scheduling appointments with people who are an active service resource. So that would be fine again. And we're going to do read only here. You can see it shares with our guest user automatically. But we're going to do active equals true here. Click save and click OK. For the others, I think I'm just going to keep it easy here and update our default external access. So here what I'll do is for service territory, I do public read only. For our work type, I'll do the same. And for our work type group, I'll do the same. And I'll do this as well. A little bit of overlap, but that's probably fine. Go ahead and hit save. And must be, all right, I gotta open this up then. All right. All right, so we've configured our external access. The guest user now has access to, both from a object CRED perspective as well as a, actually being able to see the actual records based on the record ownership. So now really that's basically it. So let's take a look about what this looks like in our community. So what I'd like everyone to do, go ahead and click your settings here and go ahead and copy our published site here. And it's just going to be the standard site if we put this flow on our homepage. And let's go ahead here. Let's go to a new incognito window. Okay, I think that may be a record access issue. Maybe we do need to do the sharing rules. You can see here the flow is embedded. It seems to be an issue with the underlying record data. Let me go ahead and do our sharing rules. So we did service resource. Let's do service territory. Choose our third radio button. We'll hit active. Active is true. And read only. So we'll save that. And And we'll do work type and work type group as well. That's the error that we were seeing. I think it was on the work type group. Same thing here. And I don't think we have an active here. We can say our default appointment type equals, call it all. You could restrict kind of these if you wanted to only allow certain types of meeting channels to be scheduled here. And we'll do our work type group as well. And we'll do active here. All right, so let's go ahead and wait a minute for this to process. And let's go ahead and try to see if that flow is available on our public site. There we go. So you can see we have access to the overall, right, our work type, which is our template, which is we called it loans. We can see within there the work group type, and this would allow a user. You may have a screen here to collect the user's info as well if they're anonymous. You can embed this in Community Cloud. You can also embed it on your website as well. So the Salesforce help articles talk a bit about embedding this flow component on your own corporate website, not necessarily Community Cloud, using something called Lightning Out. You can take that JavaScript and embed it as well on your website. But that's basically it here. Looks like we're right at time. And any questions or comments?
No, I think this is awesome. I think this is genuinely awesome. I'm so excited to try and get this out into the wild.
Great to hear.
I work for a consultancy, and there are so many times when customers are asking for simple appointment scheduling, and this just ticks so many boxes.
Mm-hmm.
The one question I do have is, do you know if there's any way to tie in office holidays? So you can block out Christmas Day or a public holiday?
I don't know off the top of my head. I would assume so, but I don't know for certain.
Okay.
I wouldn't go with the company scheduling, this company schedule. Or not, I don't know. I've never used this, so I'm not sure.
So
I'm also not sure. I'm not going to pretend I know.
In FSL, you do specifically, you can create holidays in the back end, and then you tie those holidays to a specific operating schedule in FSL.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay.
I'm wondering, it's either there somewhere or it's not quite in there yet, and it might take a few releases.
I would guess it's in there. That's a guess though. So it's kind of, like I said, it uses some of the objects from FSL. It's kind of that mid-tier where you don't necessarily need the Gantt charts and all of that FSL will give you, or kind of any location data as well that the Salesforce maps will give you. But it reminds me of a tool that was very popular with Click Software before Salesforce acquired them. It was called Shift Expert, and it kind of handles that basic scheduling functionality. Maybe there's a few skills around it. Maybe there's a few, maybe it's a dedicated relationship. Like I said, we use this a lot in financial services cloud. Some folks choose to use, just the inbox scheduler where you put available times in an email. Other folks want to give, surfaces on their website, surfaces in a community in their client portal. So it's a nice feature that plugs into like already great features of Salesforce. Community Cloud. I mentioned the events earlier with the event invites being sent out via Lightning Sync. So
yeah.
Any other questions for Paul? Okay, well, Paul, will you share your materials? And of course, I'll post this, but can we post it in our group and LinkedIn too?
absolutely, I'll PDF or put this in a doc, and that way people can download it.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining today. As we said at the beginning of the conversation, our next meeting is coming up on the 20th, I believe. Is that Igor, is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah, okay. So look for the meetup invitation for that and more to come. So thank you everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.